We are following breaking news after spending 9 months longer than expected in space. 2 NASA astronauts are finally coming home.
And we're watching it unfold live right now, as you see here from these pictures from NASA on board that spaceship. Butch, Wilmore, and Suni Williams, they are just moments away from landing off the Florida coast. In fact, in the panhandle there, they rode back to Earth from the International Space Station aboard a SpaceX Dragon capsule.
That's right. Williams and Wilmore were supposed to be on an 8-day mission, but ended up staying in space because of an ongoing issue and delays. We know that there were some issues with the equipment there, with the propulsion and some helium leaks, so it was delayed.
And there they are right now, Amy. And joining us right now, our meteorologist and climatologist, Marina Jurica. She is here with us for this exciting moment. So great to see this unfold, Marina. I love this.
It really is. And I'm sure, you know, it was just a collective sigh of relief for their families and everybody to see it actually get through that deorbit phase, which we're looking at right now. And that is when the heat shield is basically going through our atmosphere, and it's very, very hot. So we had loss of signal. Now we have regained signal. So those are all positive things. And we are waiting for touchdown, splashdown here in about 5 minutes.
And you were telling us, right, that this was the most important moment, is seeing that heat shield brighten up. We did lose contact with them for a little bit. We've regained contact. Most likely they're out of the most dangerous part of the return to Earth mission, right?
True, because weather conditions are so good for this splashdown today, which is awesome. And you're going to see the parachutes.
They're going down fast.
There we
There
go.
it is, right on time.
There we go. So parachutes going next. And so the wind speed, wave period and height, lightning, rain, all those things are coming into consideration when they say, are we going to splash down today or not? I know tomorrow's conditions were not as favorable, so that's why they went up and decided today would be the much better day to come there. So weather conditions are extremely good. They've got about a 90 to 95% positive weather conditions for this, which is really incredible. And there are 7 sites that you can splash down on. Not a lot of people know that.
I didn't know
that.
that.
So there's 7 different sites that they can splash down, and they picked the one that's on the west coast of Florida. So it's just south of Tallahassee in the Gulf. And so that is where they are going to be splashing down here momentarily, just next couple minutes.
And they were going, I think, something like 17,000 miles per hour, and then those parachutes slow them down. And when they enter the water there, it should be about 20 miles per hour, I was reading.
That's unbelievable, right? Because they're going so quickly. I'm only imagining the jolt that they're going to feel when they hit the water, because if you've belly flopped or have hit the water the wrong way, it can hurt. It can be quite the impact.
On ascent and descent. So on ascent, you know, you get all of those forces that are working against
G-forces.
you. Yes, when you're moving up, and then when you're heading down, you are getting just as much. And so the parachutes do help. They help substantially. They do slow it down, but when you hit the water, they feel it.
And I was just wondering, the parachute looked a little small. I was going to ask you, Marina, they look pretty small there, but we've seen them grow as we've continued the descent here. What is the distance, Marina, from the parachute's opening to actual splashdown? Is it a couple of miles? What are we looking at?
Yes, I mean, it is at least 2.5 miles. And so they once you get out of that critical zone where we're out of the Earth and we're deorbiting, we are looking at then the ability for those parachutes to move in, which they have very nicely, and there's always 4 of them, and they really collectively make a much bigger parachutes, but it's able to slow the vehicle down a lot faster if they are singular. So then if they were to have one big one. So that's just the way that the air works as it's shooting up. It's able to pull down on that gravity, and then it's able to slow it down a lot faster.
And Marina, off the coast in the ocean, there are people waiting for them. How long before that crew finally gets to them?
So yeah, everyone's been asking me that today. It takes a while. It takes about 30 to 60 minutes, because once, of course, it does splash down, we have to have the recovery effort. So we have the recovery mission people who are there just ready to move in, and the recovery teams reach that capsule, and then they stabilize it, and then they have to hoist it up onto that ship. And so it takes a while for that to come out, and then the hatch is opened, and that's after 30 to 60 minutes. Once the hatch is open, the astronauts come out in about 15 to 30 minutes after that. So, I mean, it could be up to 90 minutes before we see them. That's the worst case scenario.
There's a medical team there as well that will check on them immediately.
Yeah, they don't get to go home for a while, right? You know, it's a few days that they have to spend with a surgeon, and then they have to make sure that they're okay and that their bodies are are, right? They're going to be in physical therapy for a while after that. A lot of people don't realize that because there's no gravity on the ISS. Your muscles atrophy, so they need to start working their muscles again now that they're back down to Earth. They need to take that time to rehabilitate, and also your eyes. Your vision gets impaired when you're on the ISS because your eyes actually, because there's no gravity, they start moving out of their sockets. And so because of that loosening of your eyes coming out of where they usually are, it's a vision impairment that a lot of astronauts deal with when they get home.
And they do exercise in the International Space Station. We see them on bicycles and whatnot to try to keep their muscles as used as possible. But I'm guessing they're feeling the impact right now of the Earth's gravity at this moment, right?
Oh, for sure. I think it's, I mean, obviously I've only been up to 80,000 feet, but we're about to do it. There we go.
Wow.
Just
hit the water. And that looked like a very successful descent there. And you see all of those parachutes now. And, you know, what I can only imagine how they're going to feel when they take their first breath of real Earth air after 286 days. I mean, that's a long time.
And you can see how just quiet the Gulf is right now, which is what they want. You don't see a lot of waves, and especially as it made that splashdown, you just don't see a lot of it. It's bouncing up and down, but it's not bouncing up and down a lot. So you like to see that. And then they also have to recover the parachutes as well. So they come out right now, they recover the parachutes, and then they make sure they stabilize the actual capsule, and they leave a lot of space for it. So the ship is a little bit away. So the recovery mission team takes just a little bit of time to get there, which we should see probably here in the next 5 minutes or so, and then they stabilize it, make sure everything is okay. They gather up all of the parachutes that are surrounding it out of the water, because that could add, unfortunately, to not the ability of it to be able to pull and hoist it out of the water.
One thing I have to say about just the technology of bringing these pictures to our viewers right now, this is something that we didn't see during the space shuttle years, because, you know, of course, the space shuttle would land at an airport, but look how close we are. I'm guessing this is a drone that they've sent out to just get an idea, get eyes on the capsule as best they can. And I'm wondering, Marina, are they sitting upright at this point, or are they laying back?
No, they're still back.
They're still laying back, right?
They lay back the entire time. When they open the capsule, that just makes it easier for them to actually come out. But they're leaning back. So like right at the bottom of the capsule, which is where the heat shield was, that is where they are located, and they are leaning back.
Yeah.
The heat shield, is it the cone, or is it the bottom part?
No, it's the bottom part. So the cone is what they close. That's before you had loss of signal. That was one of the things we wanted to make sure happened for a successful deorbit. And so once we saw that cap, that was great. And then once the heat shield came through, that's that like belly part.
And what's that little spot we see there, Marina, where you see it's either water or smoke coming out? Is that the thrusters? Is that maybe that?
You see in the bottom there in that center where it looks almost like water.
It looks like it's under.
Yes. So that's basically, it's just keeping it above. It's keeping it, it's keeping it floating above, and it's like these little tiny thrusters that are just giving it movement. And it's actually able to change locations too. If, let's say, the water conditions were really bad at that site, it just, maybe a few minutes beforehand, they're able to change locations as well before they enter deorbit. But once they enter the Earth's atmosphere, they've got to stick to that plan.
Yeah, and this little capsule, this gum-shaped capsule, is only 13 feet wide, which surprised me that it was for 4 people. For 4 people, they're in there tight. They are definitely in there tight. But wow, the relief that they must all be feeling. All 4 of them, of course, but especially Williams and Wilmore that have been there for 9 months. It's hard to imagine that they went for just a few days, and now 9 months later they are finally back home, at least as close to home as they've been in a very long time. And I believe they're based out of Houston, I think.
All the astronauts get trained out of Houston, out of Johnson, and so that's where they start there. And then they will move back there to make sure that they're all right. First they'll go, of course, to Kennedy Space Center. They'll spend a few days in quarantine. They'll make sure that they're all right, and then they'll head back to Houston and to their family, which I'm sure they are eagerly getting. But you hear them talking though, and it's just, this is what they were born to do. This is what they wanted to do.
Oh,
they're all coming.
See, 5 minutes. Yes, and Marina, I feel like people know you as our meteorologist and a climatologist, but many might not know where you worked before you joined us. You did work with NASA.
I did, and I was a launch forecaster for a really long time. I never did a splashdown. They like to use a lot of more marine forecasters to do that because, of course, the ocean conditions are just as important as the atmospheric conditions. But the atmospheric conditions and the marine conditions were just excellent today, and so it was just a really perfect day to be able to get out there and see that as they're eagerly waiting. But like I said, this is going to be patient. So this is going to be a bit of a long haul.
We want to see the hatch open and then wave and come out and do all that sort of thing,
and
right?
they don't even do that until it's hoisted onto the ship.
Really?
So right. So they've got the recovery teams are now reaching it. So that's step one. So first the recovery teams are there, they reach the capsule, and then they stabilize it. They make sure that everything is okay aesthetically on the outside, so that everything is working as it should be. And then they hoist it onto a recovery ship. And then once they get it hoisted is when they open the capsule door.
And it will be a little difficult for them to walk even. Sometimes they have to get wheeled out in a wheelchair because they just have not been walking for 9 months. 9 months.
And that's very normal. It doesn't mean anything. And honestly, the astronauts who were on board for 286 days, that's not even close to the record. Frank Rubio was up there for 371 days.
That's right.
And so, when you think about it, these astronauts are conditioned to be up there for a very long period of time. So it's not like they were stuck. They were able to do some amazing work. 900 hours of scientific research with this crew that's coming home, which is pretty amazing when you think about it.
In a confined space like the ISS, I mean, you are limited by the size of the ISS and what you can bring up with you. And I'm guessing that will they bring back anything on this capsule and any experiments or anything or not yet?
Not usually. Usually they go up with them, so usually there's instrumentation that goes up with them when they launch. There's certain very specific scientific experiments that they've been asked to do while they are up there, whether it be for air quality or for aurora, even like a solar max time. They've been doing a lot of visual experimentation on how solar max has been creating things across the planet and creating different interactions with our atmosphere and the solar max year that we're in right now. And so there's different research projects that they work on very specific to what's happening at that time of year and the very specific astronaut that's sent up there. So they also look at that. If someone's a biologist, then they'll have them use their expertise for those certain scientific research experiments.
I heard Suni and Butch mention that they saw quite a bit of the aurora borealis from the International Space Station, which, I mean, I know it's a bucket list type of thing for a lot of people. You've seen it, right, Marina?
I just recently.
You just came back from it, right?
I just came back from my Norway research trip, and we were studying how solar max affects glacier melting in the front lines of climate change, which is in Norway. We were 200 miles above the Arctic Circle in Tromsø. So of course you have human climate change, and then you also have things that happen naturally, like solar max. And so we wanted to see how those in combination with each other, if it expedited glacier melting and exacerbated the issue. So it was pretty fascinating. But yes, because of solar max, I'm sure they got a show, because it has been I mean, we saw it here in Southern California, last year.
You could see it. That's
I mean, it was pretty impressive. And so because it's solar max this year and it seems to have a lot of heightened activity, I'm sure they got to see quite a show, numerous occasions.
Is that the boat right there that we're seeing?
Yes.
That will come, and actually the capsule will be hoisted upon
the
that?
one in the background there?
No. It's a much bigger boat than that. That is just the recovery teams. So that's the first to reach it. And then I believe the one in the back, because that one looks like it. Can you see how it's got like that that hoist on the back of it?
That's what I was asking about. That one right there.
Yeah. So that one in the back, and I'm assuming that that's going to be it because it actually has that hoist. You can see it right on the back of that ship. But the one that's right next to it,
doing something now.
Yeah, they're just making sure that it's stable. They're just checking the outside, like I said, just to make sure that everything is fine and that everything looks okay for it to be able to actually hoist out. It would be really bad if there was a crack or if there was anything wrong. They want to make sure that everything on the outside is looking good.
And not to put you on the spot, but this was white when it started, right? And those are like almost like burn marks.
Are those scorch marks?
Yeah.
Yep. And do they happen when they leave Earth and when they return? Is this simply maybe just re-entry?
It's just re-entry because the capsule, remember when it was on United launch, well actually this one is Dragon, sorry, not Starliner, but when it was on SpaceX's, the capsule's encapsulated. And so as it launches up, then it lets it go and then it docks onto the ISS.
They're climbing up on there right now.
And that's the recovery team. Like I said, they've got to do a series of checks and balances just to make sure that everything's okay. But yeah, once it's docked onto the ISS, when it undocks and comes back, that's the first time it's really, I guess, naked, so to say.
Yes.
It's, it's exposed to all of the elements coming back into the Earth's atmosphere.
They must be so relieved just to see this this worker here, this engineer, through the porthole that they've made it. And I guess they are getting updates.
Oh, for sure.
As everything's going on there, they're listening to what's going on. They know exactly what's going to happen. As you said, this could take quite a while before we even see them exit the capsule, right?
Right, yeah, and they have full communication because, I mean, like that loss of signal was only for those few minutes right after we had full re-entry. They got full contact with those astronauts, and that was pretty much going to last all the way until they make it out of the capsule. So they have full communication with them.
And so many eyes on this splashdown. People have been waiting, friends and family have been waiting for them for so long, 9 months, and a lot of anticipation. We know that, we watch this and it's so cool, but we also know it's very dangerous for them to make that re-entry and the heat that is involved and just so many technical things that have to go just right to make it a success.
Oh, and I always tell this, I scrubbed so many more launches than I actually did, because I mean, you just don't want, especially when human life is involved. I mean, obviously when there's a payload, you don't want that to blow up either, because that's a lot of money too. But when there's human lives involved too, I mean, you just kind of take that extra step of precaution, and they take their go, no-goes very seriously. And so, I mean, even if the weather was slightly, just not okay, they just wouldn't go ahead and do it. And so that's, I mean, it's always a risk, of course. There's always a risk of things going wrong, but that's why everybody that's in mission control, and I'm telling you, it is an atmosphere in mission control for both the launch and the landings. You are on the edge until you get that final collective sigh of relief when everything is okay.
And we've seen launches canceled even at the last second with the countdown clock going down. All of a sudden, the countdown clock disappears, and that's when that was canceled.
Especially in Florida. I mean, working and living there for so many years, it just happens to be that a lot of these launches are in the afternoon, which is the worst possible time in Florida, because you get that sea breeze collision during the spring and the summer months, when basically you get thunderstorms every single afternoon. And so the wind, and especially upper level winds, are really critical. The lightning, it can't be anywhere near 10 to 15 miles away from not only a splashdown site, but from the launch site as well. Wow. And so the lightning has to be far away. It has to be just really as calm as possible with the upper level winds, because the rocket doesn't really care so much about what's happening right on the surface. The most important thing, especially at liftoff, is going to be those upper level winds, because it has to get into a certain trajectory. So when it's coming back in, the trajectory is a little bit easier because it has a huge gulf to be able to splash down into. So if it was a little bit off and their trajectory was, because of winds, moved a little bit, it's not going to be a huge issue.
It's got to thread it has to thread that incredible needle of temperatures and weather forecasts and all sorts of things. And once the capsule makes it up into orbit, then does gravity or lack of gravity help it propel forward?
Well, I mean, it has thrusters once it's on its trajectory. It moves it up into the exact location it needs to be in, but it can make minor changes to that trajectory. But once it launches, it is headed to the ISS.
It's like a
and
slingshot,
it's put in a perfect path for that. So that's why you're right. I mean, it basically comes down to physics and math, getting it to exactly where it needs to be, and then it can just make those minor movements, both on entry, on re-entry, and both on entry. So.
It's still incredible just watching all these different camera angles that we're getting now. This is the recovery ship, I believe, Marina, right? It looks like that.
That were threatening.
And I was with her all through that whole time.
My husband, Mark, was on the birth certificate, not Robert.
Figure out a way if she gets a DNA test or something.
He leaves me alone.
All that's going to do is help her financially. I mean, I don't understand why.
I could not be the father.
She don't want to do it, because I must be the father then.
And now, the next case.
All parties in the matter of Alec.
Maybe, or once they get here.
They should show it. I mean, as soon as we get that capsule hoisted and they make sure that everything is stable, they should open the capsule right there.
And
I
that's
mean,
where
I've never seen SpaceX not do it right there. In other, like Apollo, they never did it like right away. They waited, but now with SpaceX, most of the time, I'd say at least 90-95% of the time, as soon as we get that hoisted up there, it is ready to open.
Well, this has certainly been an
So
exciting time to watch
And
this.
this November, it's going to be 25 years that we've had continually a human aboard the International Space Station. And with like I said, 900 hours of scientific research, it is such an imperative part of our scientific community to be able to do that and to be able to continue to have astronauts travel to the ISS. And I'm so glad that once again, we have 4 astronauts safely back home.
And to inspire young kids, right,
yes.
to go into space like so many kids my age all wanted to be astronauts when they were growing up.
Of course, we're going to continue to follow this. We're going to bring you much more on KCAL News at 4 o'clock.
All right, thank you so much for joining us. We'll have the very latest on the astronauts' return to Earth coming up at 4.